Jamie stood alongside his uncles and his brother, John, as usual. To his right side, they waited as the procession entered, the king's guard out front, Sir Barristan leading the way, followed by the king and 2 more of his former brothers. The king looked uncomfortable on his horse, and it made Jamie smirk. This fool spent years telling people if he'd have faced Sir Arthur, he'd have beaten him just like Ned did, and yet could barely sit his horse steady. He grimaced when the wheelhouse came into view. She'd be inside, he thought, and knew that things would be uncomfortable for the duration of the tourney. Before he could let his thoughts dwell, he noticed Jon Arryn among the retinue, which surprised him, although the lord was a stickler for tradition and showing respect. Turning to those nearest to him, he dropped to one knee as the others did the same. "Casterly Rock is yours, your grace. Rise, key, Lord Jamie." "Thank you, your grace." "Ah, Geryon. It's good to see you, my friend," the king jovially said, moving to his uncle. "You too, your grace," his uncle said with a bow. "It should be an epic tourney, don't you think, your grace?" "Aye, I do, Geryon. Lord Kevin." "Your grace." "And you must be Tyrion," the king said, moving down to his brother. "I am, your grace." Jamie watched as the wheelhouse door opened, his sister exiting, holding onto the hand of her son. Joffrey was every image. His mother's boy, his blonde hair and green eyes reminded him of Tyrek, his nephew, the Lannister gene obviously strong. He swallowed as she made her way over to him. "My queen," he said with an over-exaggerated bow. "Lord Jamie," she replied, a devious smirk appearing on her face as her eyes practically devoured him. He noticed her look to his right and see Jon, the look quickly changing from predatory to something like disgust. He battled down his instincts and smiled at her, forcing her to look back at him, her eyes glimmering in delight. "My queen," his Uncle Kevin said, his bow as exaggerated as Jamie's was, but seemingly more sincere. "Uncle, it's good to see you again. You too, my queen." The toady voice of his uncle grated on him. "Your grace." Gerion's voice was dripping with false courtesy. He and Cersei had never got on. His humorous ways and lack of seriousness always grated with his twin. "Uncle." Finally, she looked to Tyrion. The look she gave him made the one she'd given Jon earlier seem almost welcoming. Disgust, contempt, even downright hatred was on her face before she had a chance to say anything, though Jamie decided to say hello to his nephew. "Greetings, your grace." "Uncle," the small boy said without any sense of emotion whatsoever. "How was your trip, your grace?" "Terrible, uncle. The West Lands are boring. They are an acquired taste, your grace." "Lord Jamie," Jon Arryn's voice called to him as he moved towards him. "Lord Jon, it's good to see you again." "Aye, my lord, though perhaps it could have been under better circumstances. My condolences on your and your family's loss." "I thank you, my lord." "Perhaps we should move inside. I'm sure you and their graces have need of refreshing yourselves, and I'll have you shown to your rooms." "Of course, my lord. Are you Ned's boy?" Jon Arryn said, looking to his right. "I am my lord, Jon Snow." Jon bowed while greeting the old lord. "Well met, Jon Snow. I was your father's foster father for many years." "Aye," father spoke fondly of you. "Lord Jon, it seems I was named for you as well. Ned honors me. I look forward to seeing more of you, young Jon." Jamie turned to the rest of the group and gave them a nod to signal they should go inside. He and Jon walked to where the king and queen were standing and began their journey inside the castle. The queen's look alternating between glowering at Jon and trying to mentally undress Jamie. "Ah, Ned's lad, how are you finding the rock snow?" the king asked after noticing Jon. "It's wonderful, your grace. It's not Winterfell, though. You must be missing the north and your father?" "Aye, your grace, but Lord Jamie and his family have been very kind." "Good. Looking forward to the tourney, are you? Seeing all those knights fighting raises the blood, and who knows, in a few years it'll be you yourself taking part, eh, lad?" "Aye, your grace. I'm looking forward to competing." "Competing?" The king looked at both Jon and Jamie confusedly. "Competing?" The king looked at both Jon and Jamie confusedly. "Surely the lad's too young to compete, Kingslayer." "No, your grace. We're doing something different this year. A squire's dueling tournament for those under 12. Jamie said, not correcting the king's use of the moniker he hated. Why would you do that, Lord Jamie? The king asked, genuine interest on his features now. These boys we train, your grace. They're the future. They're the ones who'll fight long after we cannot, so let's see them compete. Let's give them something to show their talent, something to aspire to before they're old enough to compete in the lists themselves. The king nodded along, intrigued by the idea. And if it meant more fighting, then it was something he'd definitely be interested in. But the thoughts of young boys' weapons in hands disturbed him. Surely the danger was real. It'll be tawny swords, of course, your grace, not live steel. Ah, well, then I'm all for it. Good luck, lad. I'm sure you'll do your father proud. I have no doubt he will, your grace, Jamie said, smirking at John. Cersei glowered through the whole exchange, Jamie noticed, and her looks to John intensified as they reached the lift. Though she seemed to relax and turned to smile at him, he shuddered. There was a time when a smile from his sister would cause his breeches to grow tight. It just repulsed him. The feast that night was a raucous affair. The king was in great spirits. The idea of seeing men fighting always stirred his blood, and Tyrion watched as the man groped and ogled, serving girls left and right. Tyrion sat at the high table along with his brother and uncles, far enough away from his sister to enjoy himself, despite the glares she sent his way. John sat beside him at Jamie and Gerion's insistence. The boy was basically family at this point, at least to certain members of the house. His uncle's family sat at a lower table, and there was almost a competition going on between him and John to see who was getting the most glares, him from his sister, or John from his uncle Kevin, a few seats down, and from Lancel at the lower table. It amused Tyrion. No end, as it seemed to make no difference to the boy whatsoever, a stark difference from how he'd been when he arrived, and Tyrion felt a pang of pride that he had played a small part in that. You enjoying yourself, John? Aye, Tyrion. Though I notice you're not drinking as much as usual. I can't. John, if I do, there'll be none left for the king. He motioned to where the king was swallowing a large tankard, and the two of them laughed together, getting him an even bigger frown from his sister in return. He likes his drink all right. Aye, that he does, John. He looked on as John got up and headed towards where the king and queen and his brother were sitting. He was about to say something to call him back when his uncle Gerion sat down beside him, the ever-present smile on his face looking a bit different this time, and directed at John. Where's he going? Tyrion asked. Ah, it's about that time, all right. What time, uncle? Story time. Tyrion smiled as he watched John bid his farewells to the king and queen, and to his brother and Lord Arryn. His uncle was right. It was about time for Joy's story, and there was nothing, not even a feast with a king, that would keep John from that. He looked to his uncle as the boy left the room. Yep, John was family all right. Cersei sat at the feast on the opposite side of her brother Lord Arryn, to one side, and her uncle Kevin to the other. They were engaged in their usual drivel, and it was driving her mad. She should be sitting beside Jamie. She should be close enough to touch him, to feel him next to her, and instead, she was with these two dolts. Her husband was being his usual oafish self, which tonight was a good thing. It would make getting to Jamie easier if the fool was fucking serving wenches in his room. She looked over the room. These were her subjects, her people, and while they showed her deference, the way they looked at her brother annoyed her. She was who they should love. She was their queen. She hated them all. But as she looked down the table, she saw the figure she hated most of all, the demon who killed her mother, the shame of her family. Valonqar, a voice in her head said, forcing her to shudder. As she was thinking this, the northern bastard her brother had seemingly adopted made his way to the front of the table. The impertinence of the boy, daring to address his betters, he should be whipped. She looked closer at the boy, something familiar about him. She knew he was Ned Stark's bastard, but it wasn't that, it was something else. Your grace, my lords, the boy said. Ah, young Snow, what is it, lad? Her husband moved his head from between the bosom he'd been nuzzling. I came to bid you a good night, your grace, and you to your grace. He bowed, looking from her husband to her. And you too, my lords. Aye, good night to you, lad. Jon Arryn said, a smile on his face. Good night, John, her brother said, his look foreign to her. What a well-behaved lad, not like what they say about bastards, but then he is Ned's lad, Jon Arryn said as the king nodded. Is he coming along well, Lord Jamie? Jon asked her brother. Aye, my lord. Jon will surprise everyone in a few years, mark my words. Good, Good to see the lad doing well. Ned deserves it, the king said before continuing his debauchery. As the feast ended, Jaime made his way to his quarters. The king had been well into his cups, and he was glad he'd hired 2 whores to serve as his serving girls for the feast. His servants were servants, and servants only, and needed to be treated accordingly, and having a fat oaf grope them wasn't part of their job description. Luckily, Tyrion knew exactly the ladies for the job, and, as usual, his brother delivered. He entered his room and began to disrobe. All in all, today had gone well. He'd managed to steer clear of his sister and kept the king and his retinue entertained. Jon had been well received with both the king and Lord Arryn. Seemingly happy with the lad, he had been surprised when Jon left so early, but the boy knew his manners and said his farewell to the king, earning himself some plaudits from those assembled. Others had not been as polite. His nephew was a nightmare, 3 named days old and already full of self-importance and disdain. Jaime placed his clothes on the dresser and walked naked into his sleeping area. A large bed and small table, all the furniture he liked in this room. Too many years in the White Sword Tower. Probably the reason behind his aversion to comforts. As he moved his covers, he heard a soft sound, a murmured breath. No, she wouldn't. He thought, his heart racing in his chest. Jaime, what took you so long? The covers fell to the floor, revealing her there, her blonde hair spread across the pillows, her posture deliberate and provocative as she met his gaze, a silent invitation in her eyes. Come to bed, brother. It's been so long. I've missed you. Jaime looked around the room and found her clothes crumpled on the ground. He picked the dress up and threw it at her, the shock of it hitting her. Halting her movement, she looked up at him, hurt clear in her eyes, before suddenly the fury hit her. You dare reject me. I'm your queen. You belong to me. Get out. Get out now, or so help me. Jaime angrily said. You'll what? She asked defiantly. I'll drag you down the halls to your husband's room. Tell him what you've done. How do you think he'll react? You wouldn't dare. Jaime moved towards her, his hand shooting forward to grab her hair before she moved quickly back. She looked to him, her eyes full of fury and hate. But as she got dressed, she began to cry, the tears falling down her face. Jaime, my love, we belong together. Can't you see? We were supposed to be together. We'll never be together, Cersei, never. He left the room and quickly got dressed before heading out down the corridor. He walked as fast as he dared, and very soon he was at the door to the feasting hall. As he entered, he heard voices. His uncle Geryon and brother were there, along with Jon, who had obviously been unable to sleep. Ah, Jaime, come join us. We were just telling Jon here about the time you and Tyrion got lost in the vaults. We didn't get lost, Geryon. Jaime and I were playing hide and seek. Tyrion, it's not hide and seek if no one's looking for you, Geryon said, causing all 3 of them to laugh. Jaime smiled and sat down. Jon immediately poured him a drink which he emptied, causing the boy to frown before he poured him another, this one. He sipped quietly as the stories continued. He knew he'd need to get some sleep soon. Tomorrow would be a busy day. The Tyrells and Tullys were arriving along with the rest of the Lords of the Vale, but he'd stay for a while. Perhaps by the time they all went to bed, he'd actually be able to sleep without the image of her in his bed. Daemon Lannister was drunk. No scratch that he was more than drunk. He stumbled down the hall trying to find his room when he bumped into a blonde, crying girl. No, this was no girl. This was a woman, a very beautiful woman. Are you okay? He doesn't want me. Why doesn't he want me? Am I not attractive? Who doesn't want you? Whoever he is, the man is a fool. You're beautiful, the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. A line, to be sure, but it was the best he could do in his drunken state. You think I'm beautiful? You are very beautiful, my lady. You want me, don't you? She said as she moved closer to him. Davin could feel his body responding. He was glad he wasn't that drunk, he thought, as he pulled the woman into a kiss and maneuvered her towards his room. He felt her hands on him through his clothes, and all he wanted was to be close to her as quickly as possible. I want you, Lannisport. Olenna was glad the journey was over. She was tired and in need of a good bath and some wine and refreshments served on a proper table and not in a tent. A part of her was miffed that they wouldn't be staying at Casterly Rock itself, but she was comforted by the fact that a large residence had been made available to them. As they travelled through the town, she noticed the arrangements that had been made. Lannisport had always been impressive, but here it seemed transformed. Pavilions as far as the eye could see. Merchants' tents overflowing with merchandise. The tilt yard in the distance looked far bigger than the one in King's Landing, and the seating behind and around it was equally impressive. But one thing seemed out of place to her. A small, domed arena with one side open and three sides made up of seating was built to the left of the tilt yard. What its use could be confounded her. She watched as a group of horsemen approached them. A number of them clearly guards, but the three at the front were obviously important. She noticed the tall, graceful figure of a blond man who could only be a Lannister beside him rode two small boys. One had dark hair while the other's was a dirty blonde as they got closer. Though the blonde's features became clearer, not a boy then, a dwarf, the imp of Casterly Rock. "Greetings, Lord Mace. My lords and ladies, I welcome you to Lannisport." "Well met, Lord Jaime. May we pass and do the introductions once we're all on our feet?" "Indeed, my lord. I've just come to escort you to your accommodations." "How gracious of you, Lord Jaime." "Think nothing of it?" "My lord, you are honored guests, and men of your importance deserve no less." She watched as her idiot son blew up like the pufferfish he most resembled. Apparently, Lord Jaime knew something of the game after all. Her gaze was drawn to the two others with him. The dwarf was nothing like she expected. Stories of his grotesqueness were legendary, yet to Olenna's wizened gaze, he simply looked like a slightly overgrown. They rode through the town before coming to a large house with a huge courtyard. The people began to dismount, and Olenna turned to her granddaughter and good daughter before they made their way from the wheelhouse. The house was impressive, large and imposing and worthy of her family, she thought, as she moved towards where her son and Lord Jaime were talking. At least he didn't try to slight them. "Mother, may I present Lord Jaime? My lady, it's a pleasure to meet you." "Is it now?" she said, raising her eyebrow. "Why, of course. What's better? Why settle for one queen when you can have two?" She looked at him before smiling, noticing his gaze switching from her to her granddaughter. Maybe not such a fool, after all, she thought as he motioned to his two companions. "My lady, may I introduce my brother, Lord Tyrion, and my page, Jon Snow." "Well met, my lady," the dwarf said. "Lady Olenna," the boy said as he nodded his head in a courteous bow. She looked carefully at the lad. He hadn't tried to kiss her hand, knowing his station may give offense, but he had courtesy, and it seemed genuine to her. "My lord, young Snow." Garland and Loras accompanied their mother over while her granddaughter walked over to her. She watched as Lord Jaime and his brother made their introductions to the boys and her good daughter, while Jon Snow quickly engaged the two boys in talk about the tourney, grabbing their interest quite quickly with something he told them. "And this must be Lady Margaery, the Rose of Highgarden herself," Lord Jaime said, taking her granddaughter's offered hand and placing a kiss upon it. "Lord Jaime, a pleasure to meet you. I've heard so much about you. Not all of it's true, I'm afraid, only the good stuff," Jaime said, causing a small laugh from Margaery. "May I introduce my page, Jon Snow?" "Well met, Lord Snow." Margaery offered him her hand, which he took and placed a kiss on. "Just Jon, my lady." "Well then, well met. Just Jon." Her granddaughter giggled, causing the young man to smile. Olenna watched the exchange with an eagle eye. The boy smiled at her granddaughter, and his features changed completely. He beamed, and it was hard not to smile with him. His whole face lit up, and she could see shades of the handsome man he'd become one day. She'd need to keep an eye on that one for sure. Tyrell women always had trouble resisting a handsome face. She herself was proof of that. The meal they had that night was the best one they'd had since setting out on the long journey to the tourney. Whoever had stocked the kitchens had done so incredibly well. Fine arbor gold, the finest foods from the Reach. Some of her favorite strawberry and lemon tarts were able to be made, and the pastry and freshness surprised her. Her grandmother was enjoying herself. Also, she could tell, she was sipping wine and eating the various cheeses that had been delivered only that day. Her father held court at the table, speaking to the other lords of the Reach that had already turned up. Thankfully, Lord Tarly hadn't so far. The grim lord really knew how to drive the atmosphere from any room. "So are you going to enter with me or what?" "No, Loras, I'm not. It's for under 12 name days, and I've just celebrated my 13th. "So they won't know." "You expect me to lie?" "No, not lie, just don't tell them." "No, that's not something a knight would do." She listened as her brothers argued about something or other. What? Were they talking about how could Loras enter anything he was too young? She needed to know what they were on about. What are you two arguing over? We're not arguing, we're discussing, Loras said, his smug smile annoying her, not for the first time. Oh, discussing then. Loras wants me to join up with him and fight in the tourney. But you're too young. You can't fight in the tourney. Think about Willis. The worry clear in her voice. No, sis, it's not like that. There's a squire and pages tourney, a set of duels I'm entering, and I wanted Garland to enter too, but he's too old, so it'll just be me representing the family and winning glory. She rolled her eyes at him and looked at Garland. He looked eager to enter, but he would never lie about his age. He was far too gallant for such a thing, a squire's tourney, though she'd never heard of such a thing. Where did you hear of this? John told us. He's entering and says most of the squires and pages of age will too, especially when they hear of the prizes. You mean Jon Snow? He told you about this, Loras. Was that what you were all discussing so excitedly? Yeah, he's Jaime Lannister's page, or is it squire, I'm not sure. But he gets trained by Jaime Lannister, the Lucky Sword. Anyway, he told us that there's a dueling tourney for squires and pages of less than 12 name days, and the tourney has prizes. I hope I face him. If Jaime's teaching him, he must be good. Prizes? Apparently the semi-finalists get 250 gold dragons each, the runner-up 500 and the winner 1,000. Garland said grumpily. She nodded and looked at her brother. She knew the gold didn't matter to him. The competition, though, he'd like nothing more than to face the others and test himself. Although he had said he had no plans to enter into tourneys unlike Laura's, who was living for the chance to do so, this was different, though she could tell. For Garland, this would have been something he'd enjoy. She almost reached over to give him a hug, but he wouldn't accept it, and she didn't want to embarrass him, so she just nodded sympathetically and thought about the tourney itself. It'd be interesting to see boys of her, Laura's and Garland's age, fight, and she found herself looking forward to it. She'd be there to cheer Laura's on, as she thought about it. She remembered the smile the dark-haired boy had given her earlier. She wondered if he'd be any good. Laura seemed to think so. Well, then now she had two people to cheer. Jon Arryn walked from his rooms down to break his fast. He had slept better than he had in a long while. It seemed funny to him that Tywin Lannister's home made him breathe more easily than King's Landing. As he walked past a room, he heard laughter and giggling. The door was open, so he entered. "No, Jon! Horsey, go faster!" the little girl excitedly said. "Like this princess." The boy moved quicker, the little girl shrieking as she held onto his shoulders. "Yay! Go, Horsey, go!" Jon watched as his namesake played with the little girl, her laughter growing louder and louder. He smiled as he looked at the two of them, happy and oblivious to the problems of the world outside. The young man may have had his father's look, but the temperament was much different. Ned was stoic and withdrawn. His son seemed more outgoing and, judging by the look on his face, freer with his emotions, although Jon did remember his much straighter face when speaking to the king. "Hello there, lad," he said as the young man looked in his directions. "Lord Jon, I'm sorry I didn't notice you there." "No, not Jon, you, Jon," the little girl said, looking between the two of them. "Aye, Joy, he's Jon too, Lord Jon." "No, you, Jon," she grabbed the boy tightly. "I'm sorry, my lord, Joy's a little shy around new people." "No worries, lad, and who is this little sweetheart?" "This is Joy, my lord, Lord Gerion's daughter." "Joy," a little voice said, making the old lord laugh. "It was nice meeting you, Joy, and seeing you again, young Jon. Enjoy the rest of the day. You too, my lord." If only that was possible, he thought as he left the room and continued down to break his fast. Robert certainly wouldn't be up this early, and he hoped the Queen wouldn't be either. A simple, quiet breakfast is what he wanted. The work of the realm could wait. He entered the room and saw Geryon and Tyrion Lannister were the only two people he recognized, so he helped himself to some water and made his way over to them. "Good morning, Lord Jon," Tyrion said before his uncle greeted him likewise. "Lord Tyrion, Lord Geryon." He sat down and waited for the serving girl to come to him. Within seconds she had, and he asked for some bread and fruit and warm milk, his body not conducive to a large meal in the morning. "Did you sleep well, my lord?" Tyrion asked. "Indeed. Very well, thank you, Lord Tyrion." Lord Geryon. "I met you, daughter, a wonderful girl, if you don't mind me saying. She and young Jon Snow seem friendly." "Aye, that they are, my lord. Joy's taken quite a shine to young Jon, and the boy indulges her, well, spoils her, really." "Good. He seems to be settling in well." "Aye, that he is, my lord. Best decision my nephew ever made was making that young man his page." It would be a good match, though. John and Joy, two bastards of great houses. Perhaps a keep somewhere could be arranged, and if the two got on well together, it'd be all for the best. Something to think of once they got older. He'd have to clear it with Ned, though, but that wouldn't be a problem. Jamie looked out at the assembled crowds. These last few weeks had been building up to this, and he was pleased at the turnout. Tyrion and his uncles had done well. All the great houses were represented apart from the north. He had expected that Stark wouldn't show, but he could sense the disappointment in Jon that he hadn't. He was tired of the greetings, though. The Tyrells had been fine, but the Tullys looked at him like they were better than him. The damn fishes that they were. The Lords of the Vale had always carried an air of superiority. But at least they had something to be superior about. All the fishes had done was force marriages, although given their daughters were between them, a bitter trout and a crazy one, that was probably an achievement overall. He looked to the king and queen beside him and shuddered. That crazy bitch would surely have been the death of him had he stuck with her. As he looked out to the crowd, his family sitting to his left, and the great lords spread about the arena, Jon handed him the proclamation. Your graces, my lords and ladies, good people of Lannisport, the Westerlands and beyond, I bid you all welcome to the tourney of Lannisport. The crowd cheered. My father fell fighting for his people and his king. He will be missed, gone, but not forgotten. The crowd chanted, another of Tyrion's good works. This tournament is in his honor and is in recognition of the great victory won by our King Robert I of his name. Hail, good King Robert! The chants rang out. Tyrion really did know how to stoke a crowd, he thought, looking at his smirking brother. So without further ado, by your grace's permission, let the games begin. The cheers in the crowd were deafening, and as Jaime sat down, a large chant of Lord Jaime filled the air. He looked to his brother, who shook his head, and looked to Jon, who just smiled at him.